Katharine Hamnett, what first drew your attention to the environmental and social impacts of the clothing industry?
What first drew my attention to the social and environmental impacts of clothing was in the late 80s. We were doing phenomenally well, and I suppose I became bored with success if it's possible, but hated failure, and I thought we'd just do one last check to make sure that we're not doing any harm.
In what ways does your approach improve the sustainability performance of clothing?
I suppose to improve the sustainability of our clothing, we had to examine the entire supply chain and make sure that at every phase it was as squeaky perfect as humanly possible. I suppose I'm an obsessive, a fanatic, a purist, and I'm knowing that we're going to fail somewhere. I think that we have to apply very, very stringent standards from the very beginning, and of course the beginning starts with the farmers. We're pretty driven by the fact that there's cotton agriculture is 10% of world agriculture, and at the moment only I think 2% is organic. So that means 98% of the 400 million people involved in cotton agriculture are exposed to pesticides on a daily basis. So we started with the farmers, and for me the main point was the agriculture, because I saw that's where the greatest level of suffering is. But we've insisted on certification and traceability, accountability right the way through the supply chain, from the farmer right through to the garmenting, to the transport, the shipping by sea rather than by air, to the packaging. We went through the whole thing of recycled paper, is recycled paper and recycled card better than Forestry Stewardship Council's new wood pulp, and you have to look at situations like sometimes the new wood pulp is actually more environmental than the recycled. We're using recycled polyurethane for our packaging. We're keeping our packaging to the minimum. We have all our dyes, our printing inks, our labelling. We refuse to use anything that comes from China on human rights grounds because of human rights violations in China. So we can't touch silk, which is tragic because I'm a fashion designer. I love silk. I've launched several trends involving new uses for certain woven qualities, and we've had to not be able to touch these till we can get a sustainable silk. But we're actually managing to produce probably the world's cleanest sneakers and trainers. They're actually vegan, made in organic cotton with Forestry Stewardship Council rubber, even using rubber latex, pure rubber latex as a glue. So we've been able to produce that. So it's taken a long time, but to be able to do this properly, we've had to take control over the supply chain completely, to make sure that everything that is being done and it has total certification right the way through, and we've used the highest possible standards that we can lay our hands on.
Organic cotton is increasingly being used by major retailers. Do you see moving to organic cotton as the solution?
I think it's very encouraging that large retailers are finally deciding to include organic cotton in a lot of their ranges. I mean, this is something that is mushrooming across the planet, and I don't think it's actually being driven by the retailers, it's actually being driven by the consumers, which is a very exciting new development. There's been a paradigm shift in consumer buying patterns. People are universally becoming much more concerned with the honesty of the company that they're buying the product from and the environmental impact of this. For over 50% of consumers, people like Tesco, this is of paramount importance. 81% I think didn't want child labour, 82% didn't want sweated labour, and retailers are having to respond to this because marketing is defined as giving people what they want, and people, if over 30% of the consumers want this, retailers ignore this at their peril. Sustainable clothing has got to be sophisticated, glamorous, and bottom line is always economic. And I've seen two projects which are vertical, starting with the farmers right the way through to the finished product, one in India, one in Egypt, which incorporate educational models, primary, secondary, and higher education, include universities, where one case they started with sand. They actually reconditioned the soil biodynamic organic agriculture, and now they produce wholesale fruit and vegetables, cotton fibre, 700,000 baby clothes a year, medicinal herbs, biodynamic organic beauty extracts for companies like Dr. Hershka, another one in India, which is increasing its capacity on organic cotton 150% next year, taking on another 3,000 employees, very, very high quality products selling into all the large retailers and brands like Nike, M&S.
Fast fashion, increased consumer choice, and our high consumption culture are key trends. How do we reverse these?
You know, people say people are buying more and more, and if clothes are cheap, yes, you will go in and you can buy, 3 T-shirts for the price of one. I don't actually think that people are throwing it away. I mean, I think they're carrying it on wearing it, and they've got vaster wardrobes. I mean, from my point of view, I'd like people to be buying, more and more organic cotton, and I decided I want to be, drive the demand, be the demand. And if they were buying more and more clothes in organic cotton, well, that would be fantastic, because it would mean more and more money for the farmers. And of course, cotton is a plant, it's a carbon sink.
How can we influence consumers to use their purchasing power for the benefit of sustainability?
I mean, consumers now, increasingly, the statistics show, hugely want products that don't damage the environment, or that use child labour or sweated labour. And I think that we need, from a governmental point of view, I think that we need to have country of origin labelling for fibre, country of origin labelling for garments, and that consumers should actually seriously boycott goods that come from countries with poor human rights records or poor environmental records.
What do you see as the role of celebrity and fashion icons like you in maintaining the momentum around sustainable fashion?
I think it's good that celebrities play a role, because people have always looked up to celebrities. Celebrities have always been used in marketing fashion since fashion realised that it could market itself through the media. Famous people, great beauties, actresses were used even in the 19th century because people look up to them, want to look like them. So obviously if they're wearing organic cotton and they're saying, they're wearing clothes that are made sustainably, and they only want to do this, people will copy them. This is really good.
How can we mainstream sustainability in the fashion world?
I think that mainstreaming of sustainable fashion is happening because large retailers are reading the consumer surveys and realising that increasingly this is what consumers want. And, they've got to be quick off the mark. Huge supermarket chains, retail groups are taking this new consumer development very, very, very seriously. I know that brands, a year ago in America, there were maybe 30 brands doing organic cotton, now there's 300. The people really in the supply chain who'd be the most effective to target are the CEOs of clothing companies and fashion retailers, people in charge of that department, because designers, conventional cotton, organic cotton are actually identical pretty well in look and feel and appearance. So any garment that can be designed in conventional can also be made in organic. But the people who decide have got to be the people who write the checks. And they've got to decide that their company is going to be making inorganic cotton. The designers are powerless in most cases to take these decisions. These decisions are taken at board level, and it is the board that has to decide. It's not the responsibility of the designer, it's the people that own the business. I think we've had enough greenwash. I think we need real action now. I mean, I think the ETI labour code has got to be, adherence has got to be compulsory for members. It can't be optional. And this is just like, hogwash. I think that we need effective coordination between British governments and other governments, for instance the American government, that they abandon the policy of subsidising American conventional cotton farmers, because this is destroying the price that 400 million people in the developing world are getting for their cotton. Sustainable clothing doesn't have to be more expensive. It can be affordable. It should be affordable. The value to a farmer, the cotton in a T-shirt, averages about 4 or 5% of its retail value. So if he's getting paid 20% more for the fibre, that puts 1% more in the T-shirt. It's not a lot of money to pay.